Okay, time for lesson 2 on converting fractions and decimals and knowing the different types of decimals. So the values can be represented in several ways. So we know, for example, that a fraction can also be represented as a decimal or vice versa. So to convert a fraction to a decimal, we divide the numerator, and I'm just going to use a big N, by the denominator. So top divided by the bottom. So for example, 5 6, you would do 5 in the box divided by 6. Or you would say that the 5 goes in the calculator first. Calc first. And I would definitely write all this stuff down unless you absolutely know this. So that's pretty easy, especially because you're going to be able to use a calculator. I mean, you should know how to do this division, but we're beyond that right now. Okay, so then to convert a decimal to a fraction, there's different ways to do it. So you can put the decimal over 1, this is confusing, and multiply the numerator and denominator by 10 until there is no longer a decimal in the numerator. And then you just reduce your fraction or simplify it. So I've never really done it that way. So let's say we have 0.6. What this is saying is you put the decimal over 1. So you do 0.6 over 1. And then you multiply by 10, which is basically moving the decimal over 1 until there is no longer a decimal. So like for this would be 60 over 10. And then you reduce that, and that would be 6. So that does not make sense. Let's just forget that. Let's cross that out and let's do it my way. So my way is a lot easier. I just say this decimal. This is 6/10. And then you write it like that. You say 6/10. You have to know your place value, but you can look up at my chart in my room. Remember, it goes tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So then we have different types of decimals. If a fraction changes into a decimal that stops, we call it a terminating decimal. Terminating, which means it stops. Otherwise, if it repeats forever, we call it, obviously, a repeating decimal. So we are going to turn these into decimals and then state what type of decimal it is. So I'm going to do the first one. You can use your calculator, but otherwise it would be 3 divided by 8. You add your decimal point and zeros. It's still a good skill to know how to do. And you are going to get 0.375. And you can put a 0 there. So that is a terminating decimal because it stops. Okay, now let's try, we're going to skip over to 5 6. When you do 5 divided by 6 and your calculator type in the 5, your calculator says this, okay? So that would be 0.8, and then the 3 repeats. So obviously that is a repeating decimal. So I'm going to go ahead and have you do these next ones. Well, actually, I'm going to talk about number 4 and 6. So if you remember that we have that nines trick from last year. Whenever there is a 9 or 9 on the bottom or anything with 9s on the bottom, you automatically know it's a repeating decimal. So what you do is if there's a 1 9, then it's 0.4 repeating. So this one would be 0.7 repeating. So those should be easy. Just look for that nines trick. You can do 7 divided by 9 on your calculator if you want to check it out. Okay, now you go ahead and do these two and pause the video and then come back and see if you have the answer that I got. Okay, so hopefully you found that they were both terminating and you can see my answers. You can pause the video if you need more time to look at them. We're going to go on to the back. We're just practicing converting these again into terminating and repeating decimals. And so I'm going to have you, or I'm sorry, we're going to practice turning these repeating and terminating decimals into fractions. So let's do the first one. So we say 35 hundredths. So you write it just like it sounds, 35 hundredths, and then you have to reduce it. So I'm going to divide each by 5. So I get 7/20. Okay. You would say this one as 275 thousandths. So write that and reduce it. This one, you say it just like it sounds, 8 and 12 hundredths. And so then you have to reduce that part of the fraction. So divide them both by 4, and we get 3/25. Okay, you should be able to do this one. Now let's look at these repeating ones. So this is the trick. If it's repeating, you should remember that that means it's always going to have some type of 9 on the bottom. So the whole 11 is repeating. So we're going to, although we know it's just 1, but so we're going to go, we can either do 11 over, and then it would be 99 because there's 2 numbers. Or you could just do it's 1 is being repeated forever, so then it's 1/9. Either one of those work. That's dividing by 11. Divide by 11. So you go ahead and try this one. So there's 3/8, so then you know how many 9s should be on the bottom. So go ahead and pause and see if you get my answers. Okay, check to see if you got your answers there, and you can hit pause to look at them more slowly if you need to. And now we're going to go down. Don't freak out just because it's words. It says Amber has this much in her pocket. Express that as a fraction in simplest form. So again, you're just doing what you did up here, just has words. Cody's new dog weighs this many pounds. Make that as a decimal. So 7 2/3. So you're just going to bring down the 7, and then you're going to change that fraction into a decimal. And then this one, Trish entered a problem on her calculator that gave her this result. Would this decimal be considered a repeating decimal, and why or why not? So let's see your answers for these. So go ahead and pause. Okay, so you can check out the answers that I have here. Whoops, down here. 5 and 11/20. You know, if you got this, that's a good start, but you need to be able to reduce it. And if you have to use your calculator, just find a number that they both divide by. This you would have done 2 divided by 3. And then here, nothing is repeating. So this would not be terminating, it would not be repeating. This is what we call an irrational number that you will learn about later. So make sure you go ahead and do homework 2 and check your answers.